Hello, everyone. It's your girl, HannahJoyTV, with another community conversation. This time we are welcoming our brother, Attorney Gerald Griggs, for another conversation. Welcome, Attorney Griggs.
Hey, Hannah, what's going on? Thank you for having me on the platform.
Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for all that you do. Many of you know Attorney Griggs is on the front lines, working as an activist and an attorney, a community advocate, and so much more. And we are grateful for all that you do, for your leadership, your sacrifices, and just your continued efforts to continue pushing. So let's dive right into this conversation. This is about Amendment 2 that is on the ballot right now in Georgia, all right? So why is this amendment important? Why do we need to know about this? Attorney Griggs, I'll pass it over to you for that.
All right, so many of us have been marching and protesting for change around police-involved encounters and police shootings. And the biggest thing that's an impediment to it is sovereign immunity or qualified immunity. And so on the ballot, there's a ballot referendum to amend the Georgia Constitution to limit the amount of sovereign immunity. And it's called Ballot Initiative 2. It's an amendment that will allow residents to seek declaratory relief against certain laws and amendments, particularly sovereign immunity. And people ask, well, Mr. Griggs, I can't really understand what that means. Well, let me tell you what a yes vote means. A yes vote supports waiving state sovereign immunity and allowing residents to seek declaratory relief from state laws and local laws that violate the Constitution of Georgia and the United States Constitution and state law. So what does that mean? Well, if the police officer violates your civil rights, police officer violates your Fourth Amendment rights, you would have the ability to pierce sovereign immunity. And let's kind of break down what sovereign immunity is. Sovereign immunity is the legal doctrine in which it's held that the government cannot be sued without its express consent. The U.S. federal government and state governments may choose to waive sovereign immunity, and that's exactly what the ballot question is asking. Do we need to waive sovereign immunity for violations of certain constitutional, whether that's state constitution or federal constitution, and certain state laws? So it's very important that we vote yes on this because this is what we've been protesting and asking for change for such a long time, whether it's George Floyd's case, whether it's Breonna Taylor's case. We're here in Georgia. We have an opportunity to do this with this constitutional amendment. So it's important to understand that criminal justice reform, police accountability is on the ballot, and it's Amendment 2.
Thank you for that. And so if we're understanding this correctly, by voting yes on this amendment, we then in Georgia would be able to sue officers, employees of the state, and the state itself, either at local or state levels.
Yes, and county level. So as you know, the police department are usually run by municipalities, that's city governments, or state government or county governments. So you would be able to sue them for declaratory judgments for certain actions that violated your constitutional rights, whether it's the Constitution of the United States, Constitution of Georgia, or your statutory rights under Georgia code. So it's very important to understand how important this is. And it's equally important to understand this is a bipartisan issue. This is low-hanging fruit that we can suspend the use of sovereign immunity in certain cases and get to the final arbiter of justice, which is the courts, to get judgments.
Wow. And this is something, you know, people were protesting all summer long, you know, for years even prior to that. And I remember first hearing about sovereign immunity from you because you share about it, you talk about it a lot. That's not really a term I think, you know, people who aren't lawyers really use or understand. And so now that we know, what are we going to do about it, right? And so as hard as we were on the streets is as hard as we got to be at the polls. And so to all of our brothers and sisters out there who have not voted yet, this is an opportunity for us to use our voices to vote yes on Amendment 2 in Georgia to seek change, right? That change that we desire. And you personally, as a lawyer, as an attorney, what would something like this mean to you?
I mean, it would mean a lot. It would make it a lot easier for families that have been affected by police brutality and by state action to get justice and to get judgments that would give them some amount of closure. You know, we were both all disheartened at what happened in the Breonna Taylor case. We're focused on what's happening in Ray Sharp Brooks here in Atlanta, and of course Ahmaud down in in Brunswick. But for the police involved cases, this is the impediment that prevents justice. And so when you start understanding we have to deconstruct the system and reimagine it, what better way to reimagine the system than a constitutional amendment that gives you more rights to pierce sovereign immunity? So I think this is a major step, and it's in our hands. It's in the people's hands. The voters are going to make this decision, and we have to get that information out in an easy, digestible fashion. Vote yes on Amendment 2 so that we can pierce sovereign immunity and get justice for these families.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. And to everybody tuning in, have y'all voted yet? We both voted, and it feels amazing to get that vote in because, you know, there's so many things happening. There are long lines, there are glitches in the system. So definitely make sure you're getting out there early as possible, and do not wait until November 3rd. Do you want to add anything else about just the importance of getting out there and voting this election, and really the emphasis, not just on the presidential, but as well as the local?
Yes, I think people, you know, in a presidential election tend to focus at the top of the ticket. And it's very important to vote in the top of the ticket. Please make sure you vote. Again, Georgia's in the middle of the 3 weeks of early voting. Almost 600,000 have voted. 124,000 voted on the first day, and it's continued to break records. But it's also important to vote down the ticket. We have two senatorial races. One is a jungle primary to finish the seat of Johnny Isakson. The other one is for who will hold the seat that's now currently held by David Perdue. And then you have congressional races, the 5th district, 6th district, 7th district, 11th district, 13th district are all up, 4th district as well. So you have those congressional seats, and then you have the state Senate and the state legislature, House of Representatives that are up. And then, of course, you still have DAs and solicitors that are on the ballot. You have a lot of initiatives, not just the Amendment 2 that we want you to vote yes for. There's also Amendment 1 that we can go into a little bit more in depth in a later time. And then there are questions about homestead exemptions in the counties. So it's a lot of important decisions that need to be made. And as we all know, all politics is local. So there may be a national conversation about a certain candidate that you don't like, but there are other candidates that are on the ballot all the way down the ballot that can really affect your everyday life. So it's important to make sure you get out to vote, you exercise your voice. It's the only time that people will hear directly from you about these issues, and then we can hold the people accountable once we elect them. So I think it's very important for people to get out to vote, to make sure they have their voice heard, to make sure they change the system, because the only way you change this system in America is through a ballot. And so the ballots are open right now in Georgia. They'll be open for another 3 hours today, and then tomorrow from 7 to 7, all the way up to that Friday before the Tuesday, November the 3rd. And I fully expect that this is going to be the highest voter turnout we've ever seen. There's 7 million registered voters in Georgia. We're aiming for 90% turnout. Hopefully we can get there. Hopefully we can get to 100%. If you need a ride to the polls, there are groups that are doing rides to the polls. They got like 100 buses that are taking people to the polls. You can always get your absentee ballot and put it in the drop box. Don't put it in the post office. Put it in the little drop box that will be picked up by the postal by the poll workers. Or you can early vote. I suggest early voting. It was very easy. The first day, yeah, there was 7 and 8 hour waits. Now the waits are averaging about 45 minutes. Some people told me 10 minutes. You can go down to Phillips Arena. They got 300 machines down there if you're in Fulton County. You can go out to the tax assessor's office here in DeKalb County off Memorial Drive. Clayton County has several centers. Henry County. It's just time for us to voice our vote, voice our opinion about how we want this country to move forward, how we want Georgia to move forward, how we want Atlanta to move forward. And this is the opportunity, November 3rd.
Amen to that. And also, I do got to say, I know you're an OG at Lansing because you called State Farm Arena Phillips Arena, and I still do that as well. I still do that as well. But yeah, to his point, you can go to State Farm Arena or Phillips Arena, whichever one you call it, and make sure to vote early.
Or you can call it the Omni.
Or that. So we do have a question for you. And I just, again, I know we've had viewers that have been tuning in. Just really want to express our gratitude for your time as we wrap this up. And we hear you got phone calls in the background. You got emails coming in. We know you're very busy on the front lines. And so a comment here. I think you sort of answered this, but if you want to readdress it, I'm in California, but is sovereign immunity what gets a lot of these cops off? That's from Reed Kicker in California.
That's exactly what prevents you from getting justice in certain cases. It's qualified immunity and sovereign immunity. And then there's a doctrine in the law called objective reasonableness standard. That's what prevents them from being criminally charged. So we have to take apart both doctrines, sovereign immunity and qualified immunity, and then the objective reasonableness standard, which is a Supreme Court case, Gresham versus Connor. So we're taking it in two different steps. One, sovereign immunity. So in California, you need to get a ballot initiative to get California to limit the use of sovereign immunity and pierce that legal doctrine so that families can get justice. And then we have to take cases up on the Supreme Court level all the way up to strike down the doctrine of objective reasonableness standard, which gives a police officer a higher standard of which is reasonable for them to respond in certain police involved cases. So we're working it on multiple fronts. But here in Georgia, we have an opportunity to change the scope of this litigation and give justice to these families.
Thank you for answering that. And then if you could just really briefly, because we've heard you use the term qualified as immunity as well, can you just briefly break down maybe the difference, sovereign immunity and qualified immunity? Yeah. And so we have some more questions coming in, but yeah, go ahead.
So sovereign immunity is the highest legal doctrine, and then there are portions of qualified immunity. So if you're a police officer, you are qualified to have immunity because of your position. Sovereign immunity is the actual legal standard that states and federal government and counties and municipalities have. It means that the sovereign cannot be sued. So if you're an agent of the sovereign, you have qualified immunity if you're operating within the scope of your job duties based on your occupation with the state. So as a police officer, you have qualified immunity in policing. Now, if you operate outside of your legal authority, that gives you some area to be sued. But in this particular amendment, they are waiving that sovereign immunity to allow declaratory judgments for violations of constitutional and state rights, as well as federal rights. So it's a novel idea. It's great that it's bipartisan. And so, some people ask again, what is sovereign immunity? I will break it down again. And this is from Ballotopia. This is just a generic definition. I didn't want to pull the cases and bore you guys to death. But sovereign immunity is a legal doctrine in which it's held the government cannot be sued without its express consent. The U.S. federal government and state governments may choose to waive sovereign immunity. And that's what this particular amendment would do. It would waive sovereign immunity. Qualified immunity is a portion of sovereign immunity. It's where, because of your position as a state employee or state actor, you have qualified immunity when you're operating inside the confines of your job and you get sued. So you can defend a lawsuit saying that you are immune from being sued because you have qualified immunity.
So I don't know about y'all. I mean, this is a lot of great information that we're taking in here. So if you are, removing, or limiting sovereign immunity, that automatically then to qualified immunity, since qualified immunity is under sovereign immunity?
Yeah. So if you think of going to court as having a sword and a shield, the sword is the ability to sue. The shield is the ability to defend. Sovereign immunity is the shield. And then qualified immunity is the middle part of the shield. So you're blocking the ability for somebody to sue you. And so it's a portion or a part of the greater shield. That's the best analogy I can give you.
Okay, well, this is great. This is very helpful. We have another question here from Devon Brooks. And that is, what was the original intent for such privilege, and what are the benefits to the American people?
Well, you have to understand, we were born out of British common law. And in British common law, the sovereign is the absolute power. So you couldn't have citizens, suing the sovereign or the king or queen. And so when we broke off from British rule, we inherited some of those common law principles. And so the principle is that the government cannot be sued. And so the benefit to the American people was that your tax dollars weren't liable for suit for action, tortious actions, which is intentional damage done to somebody, or negligence. That's when you do something that is a lapse in judgment or lapse in a duty of care and it injures somebody. The benefits are your tax dollars are protected. The detriment is the government can get away with some things that the normal person wouldn't be able to get away with, and they don't fix them because there's no liability for those actions.
Wow, that was a great breakdown. That was definitely a great breakdown. Well, I think you've answered a lot of these questions, definitely have a better understanding of this. And, you know, I mean, this is a part of it. You even talked about the taxes, which I think we should know, right? That's going to come with it as well, which to me is worth this opportunity to seek justice in a lot of these situations. Yeah. So thank you so much. Do you have anything else you want to add before we close out today?
And I know there's a lot of people that believe in fiscal responsibility that may watch this live stream. And you have to understand the ultimate goal is not to break the American people or to break a government. It's the ultimate goal is to hold them accountable so that they see it's more cost effective to fix the problem than to continue to allow individuals to be violated and killed. So, you know, that's how we deal with anything in America. You know, if you have a serious problem, and you don't fix that problem, it could be a liability to you financially. So I think it should be the same in these police involved cases because they continue to happen. But I think we're moving towards change. I mean, we see it every day with the protests. We see new laws passed. We see new policies implemented. We see the conversation moving forward, and we see justice in many of these cases. We want to get to the point where we see justice in all these cases, and we don't have to add another hashtag. You know, we don't have to comfort another family, and we get to the point where policing gets to the point where it's about protecting citizens and not harming them. You know, there are very good officers out there, but there are a lot of bad apples that need to be held accountable. And we all know what the slogan is with the bad apple. One bad apple spoils the bunch. So we got to deal with the bad apples. And so I just think that this is an encouraging step here in Georgia. Hopefully the rest of the country will take note in how we do things here in Georgia and how we hold people accountable. And it starts with voting yes on Amendment 2.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Attorney Griggs. Thanks to everybody who tuned in with us today. We'll definitely be sure to check in with you all soon. In the meantime, as always, sending y'all lots of love, peace, and positive vibes. Goodbye, everybody.